This is Shopify Masters, the e-commerce marketing podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs. It's powered by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online, in person, and anywhere in between. To get an extended 30-day trial, visit shopify.com/masters. Hey entrepreneurs, my name is Felix and I'm the host of the Shopify Masters podcast. Each week we put out podcast interviews with successful e-commerce entrepreneurs or experts to give you inspiration, motivation, and actionable tips to increase your traffic and sales so your store can generate the sales you need to live the life you want. On the last episode, Brig Taylor from SlideBelts.com explained why your brand's competitive edge does not actually have to be your product. In this episode, you'll learn from an entrepreneur that runs in-person 24-hour events to market their vision and brand. In this episode, you'll learn how to attract smart people to your team, what is a public benefit corporation, how it can help your business, and how to prepare to launch your own in-person events. Today, I'm joined by Stefan Jacob from Cotopaxi.com. That's COTOPAXI.com. Cotopaxi creates innovative outdoor products and experiences that fund sustainable poverty relief, move people to do good, and inspire adventure. And we'll start in 2014 and based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. Welcome, Stefan.
Thanks, Felix. Thanks so much for having me. Great to be a part of the community.
It's definitely excited to have you on. So tell us a little bit more about your brand, your store. What are some of the most popular products that you sell?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. So we're, as you said, an outdoor gear brand. So we design and manufacture outdoor apparel, tents, sleeping bags, backpacks, both technical and lifestyle. And we started about 2 years ago, based here out of Salt Lake. I'm looking out of my window and have the mountains in my backyard. And so that's really why we chose, to be here in a place where there's a very, very active outdoor community and are really fortunate with regard to access to talent and just, people who really love the products and use the products that we make on a very regular basis. We, some of our most popular products are there's one which is called the Luzon del Dia, which is a very minimalist day hiking pack, but it has a really cool, rich backstory, and that's performing really, really well. On the apparel side, the basic mantra that we live by is sort of this warmth without weight concept. So we have a lot of different pieces that keep you nice and warm, insulate you well, but they don't. You don't feel like you have to rip them off your body the moment you step inside. And there's one product in particular, the Kusa jacket, which we actually use llama fleece, llama fur as an insulator. And that's doing really well. And now with the spring coming, we just launched a new running jacket called the Parade, which is like an ultra lightweight jacket that packs into a tiny pocket that is off to a great start.
Awesome. So what's your background? How did you have experience designing outdoor apparel or gear, or how did you get into this industry?
Yeah, I did not. I mean, I'm originally from Germany. I was born and raised in Munich, close to the Alps. And ever since I was a little toddler, my godfather, who was an officer in the German Special Forces, took me and his son, who was my age, out into the mountains doing crazy wild things. And so that, that's how I grew up and always, loved the outdoors. I joined the Special Forces after graduating from high school myself, and just always as a consumer, loved that industry and just always, having a gearhead at heart. And I did a computer science tech background in college. And sold my soul for a couple of years to McKinsey, a consulting company, a strategy consulting firm, and loved that experience, but also realized that I just didn't want to be a consultant for the rest of my life. And so went to business school at Wharton, where I met my co-founder here with Cotopaxi, and started a business out of school, which was also an e-commerce business. That was essentially a discovery platform for small independent apparel and accessories designers. And so it was an omni-channel concept. We had several stores and then obviously our e-commerce base. And ran that for a couple of years and just really super valuable experience that I benefit from, every day now with the second go around with Cotopaxi. Exited that in 2013 and then teamed up with Davis, my co-founder, who also is a very experienced entrepreneur, and we started this one here.
Very cool. So, so the outdoor apparel is obviously very different than just selling like T-shirts or designs on clothing, because there's probably a lot more technology involved with outdoor apparel. And because you didn't necessarily have this background in it, how did you, I guess, overcome that or work, not necessarily around
absolutely.
it, but work with it?
Well, I think this is a general learning. As an entrepreneur, you will never have all the skills required to build a business and to make it successful, right? So I think the first step is to recognize, hey, I am not an experienced outdoor apparel designer and developer. And so that's step one, having that realization. And then step two is, okay, how do we fix that? Well, it's by bringing in incredibly talented people who do have that skill set and who share the same like core values of what you want your organization to be. But at the same time, bring in people who can fill those gaps. And that's exactly both Davis and myself. We did not have that background. We were, e-commerce entrepreneurs and had experience scaling and building businesses, but did not have the product background. And besides loving, outdoor products ourselves as consumers, but not from a design and development perspective. So our third co-founder, his name is CJ Whitaker. He is from the industry. He has been working with Gregory and Black Diamond for 12 years before joining Cotopaxi, and designed some of their most award-winning gear during that decade. And so he's sort of the brains behind the product and our product vision and strategy. And then part of the founding team was also another person, Cherie, who's our director of apparel, who's an incredibly experienced and skilled visionary when it comes to apparel, outdoor apparel, and sleeping bags, et cetera. So all our soft goods are under her direction, and then hard goods under CJ's. And so we essentially brought people on board, made them part of the team early on that would enable us to come up with truly innovative, amazing product from the get-go.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about how you need to recognize what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then fill in those gaps by hiring the right people or partnering with the right people from the beginning. So I guess this kind of leads to the next question, which is, that's, I wouldn't say that's an obvious, thought, because I think a lot of people are stuck at this stage. But let's say that you've come to this realization that you need to do this. Now the next kind of big hurdle is how do you find and attract these smart people that, because they're so smart, because they're so talented, they could, work anywhere. They could work for, a more established brand, or back when you were looking to work with them, or maybe even start their own business. So how do you attract the people when they have so many options and you're just a small player at the time?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And a real challenge. How do you build a team when really all you have to sell is a vision? Mm-hmm. And I think we were able to convince the team that has come together, and every single day, that's like one of the main reasons why I'm excited and so grateful, to work on this project and build this company, is the people who have made those leaps of faith and have moved. Oftentimes, in Cherie's case, she was in Portland or close to Bend, Oregon, and then moved Hood River and moved here to Salt Lake City. We had people who moved from California, from the East Coast, and from various places in phenomenal positions oftentimes, and making sort of the jump and transition to join a very small startup in the early stages. And I think ultimately what it came down to is we have a very, very big vision. We truly believe that we can build the next large-scale billion-dollar outdoor brand. And that's obviously, it's highly aspirational. Who knows if that will really materialize? But I think we were able to formulate early on the potential and the sort of the white space that we see in the outdoor industry, which in general is a very crowded space, right? There are a gazillion brands, and you could say like the last thing the world needs is another outdoor brand. But we really feel that there is, if you look at the big players, they've been around for a very long time, whether that's a Patagonia, North Face, Columbia, et cetera. Those companies were built like 30, 40, 50 years ago. And some have done a better job than others, sort of staying relevant and staying in tune with this like younger millennial demographic that has been on the rise for several years now. as a consumer base. And so we really felt that there was a white space there where we could build a brand that is specifically designed around the desires and aesthetic and taste preferences of that younger consumer. So I think that's one, just to showcase that, hey, we have the potential to build something great, to build something amazing here as a business, and it has the legs to scale. And I think the second thing that has been really differentiating from a talent acquisition perspective has been the fact that we're from the get-go said we want this organization to be about more than just maximizing value for our shareholders. So we're incorporated as a public benefit corporation, and what that means is that in our articles of incorporation, it is stated that our reason to exist is not just to make money, but it is to have a measurable positive impact on the world. Now, that's very vague, but in our case, how we sort of make that concrete is that all of our products raise money for various humanitarian causes in three main areas of health and education and livelihoods, where we have concrete metrics that we track and hold our nonprofit partners accountable to. But it puts a purpose behind the organization, and we truly look at ways to disrupt, not just the way, not just with taking a portion of our profits and giving it to these various humanitarian causes to have a real impact in these communities, but really along the entire value chain. How can we make a difference? How can we do things differently? One example would be the pack that I'd mentioned before, the Luzon del Dia, which is a pack where the only instruction we gave to the sewers at our factory in the Philippines was, hey, the only rule is no two bags can be alike. Other than that, you decide what thread color to use. You decide what panel color to use on panel X, Y, and Z. And you're the designer, essentially. And we empowered these unsung heroes of the outdoor industry, the people who actually make this stuff, to truly be creative. And it was incredible to observe the dynamic on the sewing floor, what that did when we sort of gave them, the power to truly, be creative themselves and create these packs, based on their own mood, their own input, their sort of cultural norms. And so, the result is a very colorful, amazing product where every single one is unique. There are no two packs that are alike. And we're going one step further now there, where we start teaching, development and design skills on the factory level to basically, push these skills into that workforce and help them grow as individuals and professionals. And so I think that has made a huge difference in terms of how people feel about joining a company like Cotopaxi as opposed to other opportunities in the market, because it's not just about a paycheck. It's not just about making a career, but it's about really making a difference and working on something that's much, much bigger than any single one of us. And I think that's been a huge plus. We've had on our first week after we launched, the first month after we launched, the first 4 weeks, we had over 400 unsolicited job applications just from people who were intrigued by what we were trying to do and just said, hey, I want to be a part of that. And so I think the fact that we're a purpose-driven organization has been a big, big plus when it came to talent acquisition and talent retention.
Yeah, so a lot of great things you said there that I want to definitely talk about the Public Benefit Corporation and how you empower the manufacturers. Before we get to that, so what do you do on a daily basis? Or let's say on a daily basis, what are some things that are on your to-do list or on your checklist that helps you or that lets you help the company focus on the vision?
So we very recently rolled out a fairly holistic, goal-setting program based on OKR, Objective Key Results framework, which was initially introduced by John Doerr at Google, and has been spreading pretty wildly in the startup community and sort of the larger tech community. And
sorry, what does that stand for? You said OQR?
OKR stands for Objectives, Key Results. So you're basically saying, what are my objectives, goals, if you will? typically in our case, quarterly basis. And then you define 3 to 5 key results, which ideally, should be measurable and attainable, like the sort of like SMART principle of goal setting, slightly adapted, but in essence, that's what it is. And in the initial phase, we rolled that out with our revenue goals, and then basically break them down. There's sort of the overall company goal, and then it breaks down to sub-team goals, and then you can break it even further down to individual goals. And so I think that was one step as we grew as a team, and we're still a very, very small company with just 23 full-time employees. But that was one way to sort of break down that bigger vision of what we're trying to achieve into very concrete, actionable steps for every individual sub-team and then every individual employee. I think another big thing is just to live that vision as the leadership team. So we, for example, Davis, my co-founder, was in Istanbul just last week at United Nations World Humanitarian Summit. We're very, very active individually in various refugee rescue efforts where we work with the refugee community here in Utah. There are over 60,000 refugees, and with my engineering team, I launched a program there together with our Chief Impact Officer, Lindsay, where we teach coding and computer science to refugee youth as a means to get access to very well-paying job opportunities without the need for expensive college education. And so it's these like little things where we try to individually live by those values that we want to inspire others to live by, and take very concrete, publicly visible steps to be these thought leaders and show people how they can make a difference. And so it's not just saying, hey, we have a social mission as an organization and X percent of our sales goes to nonprofit XYZ. I think it needs to be deeper and more authentic than that. I think that alone is great, right? But for us, we really said we want to do more than that and really show that you can, do well as a business, but also, do good at the same time, and sort of be a role model individually, be role models in the community to do that. And it's like little things throughout our entire value chain where we try to bring that to light. One example is every customer that orders and then receives a package from us will receive a handwritten thank you card. And initially, we wrote those cards ourselves, but that wasn't very scalable. So we started again working with the refugee youth community here, and we set up a program where they basically write these cards for us. It's a paid job, oftentimes the first paid job that they have in the country. And then in addition, we do these like job readiness training programs where we coach them on, resume interview training, good habits, financial responsibility, various skills. Just members of the team will teach a workshop on a Saturday morning, and it's like a super rich, amazing, story that handwritten thank you card basically tells. And so it's little things like that where we really try to bring the for good aspect and integrate that into everything that we do as a company.
Mm-hmm. So you're living the vision just through kind of leading by example, and then the planning that you're doing with those OKRs. So I think it makes a lot of sense that you need to live that vision, and you should be doing that from the very beginning of your business. But when it comes to things like planning with the OKRs, did you do this from the very beginning, or does it make sense, or does it only become a necessity later when you're more than a few people on the team?
Yeah, I think it is definitely, we did not do that from the beginning. I think even our size of the company, it's early. Normally, many organizations will roll something like this out when they're 50, 60, 70, 80 plus employees, just because it becomes really, really hard to create that alignment and sort of make transparent how every individual is contributing to the bigger, larger vision for the company. So we did it relatively early. I don't think you necessarily need something as formalized in the first year or two. I think you do need to constantly talk about why you're doing what you're doing, right? The why of the organization at large and every single individual and their contribution. That is important to surface from day zero, right? So that you bring people on board who share that why, who understand, like, what are we trying to achieve? What is the end goal for this? And so I think that is important, whether that is through, like all hand meetings where you talk about that as, the leader, CEO, the C-level team talk about that vision and sort of break it down for everybody in the team, like how they can contribute. I think that is important from the early day, because it's hard to bring that to life like 2 years into your journey, right? If it hasn't been part of the conversation for 2 years. So I think that's important from day zero, but I don't think it has to be as formalized as a goal setting system with hierarchies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even based on what you're saying before about you might attract the wrong type of people too to the company if you're not, talking about the vision and really injecting that vision from the beginning, because then you might, bring the people that are not, fan of that vision. So is it just like, when you're sending emails, having hallway conversations, these meetings, are you just always trying to find ways to inject the vision, inject the why into the conversation?
Yeah, that's correct. We have, in our case, we call it Academia Cotopaxi. So every 2 weeks we have an all-hands meeting where we first do like a round-robin type updates from every single employee in the company, what they're working on right now, and challenges that they may face. And then the second half of that meeting is typically a teaching moment of sorts, and that could either be a guest speaker that somehow reinforces the vision and what we're trying to achieve. So we had, in our case, we're trying to build a large-scale outdoor company that does good and inspires others to do the same. So we had people who summited Everest talk during that hour. We had people who launched an organization that was trying to rebuild schools in West Africa. We had a former CIA agent who talked about the refugee crisis and the situation in Syria and like just the atrocities that are happening there. We had our one of our impact employees talk about his experience as a peacekeeper in Sudan, South Sudan, and various types of like teaching moments where we basically reinforce and sort of bring stories to light that highlight why we're trying to do what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So let's talk about the public benefit corporation. So tell us a little bit more about that. Like, how do you I guess, maybe we'll start, like, what is like the benefit, or maybe are there examples of times where the public benefit corporation has come in handy?
So I think it's important to distinguish between two concepts in that context. There is the legal entity type, which is a PBC, public benefit corporation, that's comparable to a C Corp or an S Corp, or in terms of being an entity, a legal entity here in the US. It's a relatively new entity type that hasn't been around for a long time, but I think that is a reflection of the desire of founders and entrepreneurs to desire and the recognition that, as a company, you have a responsibility to not exclusively your shareholders, but also to other stakeholders, communities, et cetera. And so that's what we are. We incorporated as a public benefit corporation from the get-go against the advice of our legal counsel because it was so new. And lawyers always see all the risks and warn you about them. So they advised us against us, saying that you might have difficulty raising money if you're a PBC. We did it anyways because we felt very strongly about that. And we're the first public benefit corporation to incorporate as such and then raise venture money. Has never been a disadvantage, quite frankly. So I think the concern that was expressed, we never felt it, has never come up as an issue in our fundraising conversations. But that's essentially one part of the of that construct is the legal entity public benefit corporation. And as I said, the biggest difference is that in your articles of incorporation, it's basically prescribed that you exist not exclusively to maximize shareholder value. And there are some implications from a fiduciary duty perspective. Our shareholders cannot come after us with a claim that we are not maximizing shareholder value and are doing, these things with nonprofits, giving, sales and profits away, which if you're a regular corporation, theoretically, there is the risk of that happening, right? Because you're really, as an executive of a C corporation, your only job from a pure fiduciary duty perspective is to maximize the value for your shareholder. And so that's sort of the legal aspect of it. Besides, there's a certification, which is called a Benefit Corp or B Corp certification. And that is literally a certification like many others that are out there in the market that sort of says and shows that you abide by best practices with regard to pursuing a sort of a healthy, sustainable business from a profitability perspective, but then also an environmental and a people perspective. Sort of this triple bottom line concept. And any legal entity, no matter what legal entity you are, you can be certified as a B Corp. And we are both. We started out as being only a public benefit corporation as a legal entity, but then last year we also were certified as a B Corp. So we're both now, and just really exciting to be part of that community of entrepreneurs who feel that, business is about more than just making money. And business can actually be used as a force for good and a very sustainable force for good. And that's sort of the whole concept and idea behind that.
So does it mean that you're allowed to, or you are protected if you make decisions that might solely benefit, let's say, the manufacturers that you work with and absolve you from the fiduciary duty to maximize profit for your shareholders? Yeah,
that's correct. I mean, I'm not an attorney, so I think in theory, that's correct. I think you're not absolved from the responsibility of an executive to your investors to make the business work, right? So if you only if you make decisions that sort of are to the detriment of the organization and are risking the success of the organization, you'll get axed no matter what, right? So it doesn't protect you from making unsound business decisions, but it does mean that you have a stronger position to justify why you're making certain decisions that have maybe a more longer term impact on the strength of the brand and for sure on the strength of your supply chain, for example. So I think it just sort of balances and sets expectations, like from the get-go. Basically, any investor that we talk to, we signal, hey, yes, we're building a large profitable brand, but we're doing it with a purpose of impacting as many people as we can through our various humanitarian efforts. So I think it just balances that discussion or infuses a certain clarity with regard to what is the real why, again, of the organization. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? It does not absolve you from having to build a successful business, because that's ultimately what makes an enterprise, an organization, or a business different from a nonprofit, is that it self-funds at scale once you reach profitability. And I think it doesn't change that dynamic. That pressure to get to profitability is there whether you're a PBC or a C Corp or an S Corp or any other legal entity for that matter.
Makes a lot of sense. So what kind of companies or entrepreneurs should look into following your footsteps by creating a public benefit corporation?
I don't think there is a specific industry or type of company vertical that is particularly suited for a public benefit corporation. I think anybody can choose that entity type if they feel strongly that the reason that they go into business is not exclusively to make money for themselves or the people who fund them. So that's really the whole idea, is to be at the forefront of a movement of inspiring other entrepreneurs to follow suit and recognize. And there are many examples. We're not the first ones to do this, right? There are many, many other examples. Warby Parker, Tom's, Patagonia is a public benefit corporation. So I think, we're just really, really grateful to be part of a community, a growing community of companies and entrepreneurs that are going that path. But I don't think that there's any limit to who can or should not be a benefit corp. I think one thing that is important, though, and we get that question a lot when we speak at universities and student groups, that it's hard, right? It's hard enough to start a business. It's hard enough to get to profitability, and many companies never get to that point. So I think you need to be very clear about that, and that needs to be at the forefront of what you're trying to achieve, because ultimately you will fall short with all the impact that you want to have. If you can't make the business work, all of that is mute, right? And so I think that's just very, very important that entrepreneurs, especially when you're a first-time entrepreneur and it's so difficult to get a business off the ground, especially the first time around, that make sure you focus on that. And if you feel really strongly that you have something that's unique and sustainable and with a great product market fit, and you feel very strongly about a social cause or your organization having a positive impact, that's great, wonderful. Please do it. But please make sure that the business fundamentals are strong enough to sustain that.
Makes sense. It's the idea that you can't help others if you can't help yourself first.
Exactly.
Right. Makes sense. So for anyone out there that wants to become a public benefit corp, what's the process like?
It's basically the incorporation is very similar. If you from the get-go start as a benefit corp, it's very similar to any other entity type. In our case, we're a Delaware PBC, but no matter where you are, obviously the rules and regulations are different. So I think the best advice there is to work with an attorney to just guide you through that process. And that differs from state to state. I do not have any experience in terms of converting from being some other entity type to a benefit corp. But that's again the sort of question. You don't have to be, right. You could also start by saying, hey, no matter what entity I am, I at least want to get certified as a B Corp. And that's perfectly acceptable and great. And so that's completely independent from the entity type.
Makes sense. So I want to talk about what you're saying earlier about empowering these manufacturers, these people that I think you said in the Philippines that were working for you. And when you were telling me, I was just thinking in my head that a lot of entrepreneurs I've spoken to on the podcast, off the podcast, would be very nervous about doing what you guys did, right? Where you are empowering these manufacturers to make these decisions. A lot of times I hear stories about how they worked with a manufacturer. They're not there telling them exactly what to do and exactly how to do things. Everything falls apart and doesn't end up with the products that they want. So how did you have those fears, and how did you come to make this decision?
Yeah, so I think we're very fortunate with our product team. They've had a lot of experience in their respective fields, whether that's pack manufacturing or apparel. And so we, in the case of the factory in the Philippines, CJ has been working with that factory for many years and had a very strong relationship, a trust relationship. And so I think it was a little easier to take that, leap of faith to say, hey, we know how incredibly talented these people are, and we want to give them a chance to really show that, and have seen how skilled they are as artisans and as makers. And so, that's sort of the basis from which we made that decision with that knowledge. And it turned out amazingly well. And I think if you work with a factory for the very first time and you don't have that understanding and trust, I think it's a little more difficult. And I think it's probably also a good idea to start out. In our case, we did manufacture several batches of this product where we did give them a full tech pack where everything was exactly specified, like you normally would in a manufacturing process. And so I think, and we knew that they had gone through that process, and then we sort of gave them the free reins to design themselves. So I think it was strong pre-existing relationships that were established over a longer period of time and B, the fact that they had experience with the product, so it wasn't the first time that they were making the specific product. So I think that helps to de-risk an approach like that.
For sure. So what would you say is the biggest or has been the biggest benefit to the company by having this initiative to let the factories design the products?
Yeah, I think, from day zero, we said that we were not going to build this company by spending, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars on performance marketing on Google and Facebook and whatnot. But instead, we want to find ways to empower our customers to tell our story and to give them a reason and product that's amazing enough for them to want to talk about it and has enough of a rich backstory that they want to talk about it and show others. And I think the Deldia does exactly that. It has this very deep and rich backstory that perfectly encapsulates who we are as a brand and why we're different from others. And so I think that's been the biggest benefit, that it really it gives people a reason to chat to their friends about the cool pack. It's also super colorful, so you stand out when you wear it. And so I think that to me has been the biggest benefit, besides the fact that we're having a real impact in our supply chain and are having happier workers and all that. But I think from a pure reach and marketing perspective, that's been the biggest one, right? The storytelling that comes with a product like that.
Mm-hmm. So how do you get the customers to tell your story? Because let's say someone's shopping on your site, they buy the product and they don't look anywhere else on your site, which I guess is a rare occurrence. But let's say they get the product. Are you sending them educational material about the brand, about the people behind the brand that are in the factories? How are you getting them the story in the first place for them to spread to their friends and family?
Sure, yeah. So I think there is sort of the pre-purchase education, and there's the post-purchase education. Pre-purchase, a lot of that happens on the PDP, obviously, where we do believe in video. If you go on the PDP for the Luzon Deldia, there's, you see a video that basically tells the story of that product. You're in the factory, you see CJ working with the people there and having them talk about their experience of putting this product together. And I think that's been very helpful to get that message across. Post purchase, yes, we put hang tags on all products, but it's a little harder, right? In a two-dimensional hang tag to really communicate the awesomeness of the product. So we put little cues on the product itself. For example, on the Deldia, if you open up the front zip pocket, there's a sticker that says 1 of 1 to basically signal, hey, you have a unique product, and that sort of is directly linked to the backstory of how it was made. So it's not an easy task, but I think we firmly believe in video as a powerful tool to do that online. And then the other aspect is that we firmly believe in-person experiences where we expose people to the values that our brand stands for face to face. And we've launched an event series called the Questival, where we do that, where we basically bring, it's a 24-hour outdoor adventure race where we bring people together, do a lot of product education, storytelling, and expose them to product over a 24-hour period as they're racing across their city, completing various tasks. So it's both what we do online, information that we attach to the product, and then in-person product education and storytelling.
Yeah, let's talk about the Questival. This is I think you labeled as an adventure race. So tell us a little bit more about how did you begin to organize something like this? Because a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are listening, I think they are attracted to starting online business because they don't have to put together in-person events. But obviously, there's a lot of benefit to this by what you guys are doing, by going to trade shows, by networking, by just getting out there, out behind the computer, outside the office, and actually meeting your customers. So tell us a little bit more about how you guys started to create an event series like this.
Yeah, it was really born out of the same sort of mantra. We cannot buy traffic. We cannot, and that's not to say that we don't do performance marketing. We do, right? We do retargeting and PPC and affiliates and all that, but it's complementary to the organic brand building. And to this day, 84% of our traffic is organic, and only 15% or so is paid. And so that was sort of the general belief when we started the brand, that we wanted to find a way to get in front of customers in an authentic manner, where we could tell our story, where we could engage with them. And it's just really hard to do that online, right? Mm-hmm. And so that sort of was the impetus for the Questival. Initially, we just thought it would be our launch event, right? That's how we wanted to get the word out on day 0, April 11 of 2014. So we put together this event with the same team that also basically put together the product, the e-commerce backend and all that. And it was a lot of work, man. That first, the last 4 weeks before launching, which is really the time that we had to organize this event and roll it out. We just didn't sleep. It was crazy, but that's how it is, right? I mean, that's just the early days of launching a business are just like that, and you look back at them with very fond memories. But we were essentially launching a product brand. We were launching it online, but then we also organized this event, which on the first year we had 1,500 people sign up to it. We promoted it on mainly college campuses. Our logo is a llama, and so we rented llamas at that point. We own 2 llamas now, so we're one of the few e-commerce companies to have a livestock line item on our balance sheet because of those 2 llamas. But back then we didn't, and we rented them and just showed up on college campuses with those llamas and started talking to people about Cotopaxi and this event that was coming up. And normally when you're on campus trying to hand out flyers or promote a brand, you get kicked off by campus security within minutes. Mm-hmm. But those llamas, man, they really delivered. They're so weird that we had campus police take selfies with the llama and letting us walk around and chat with people, and people wanted to hear what we had to say. And so it was just a great way to get the word out and get people excited about the first Questival. Which, as I'd mentioned, is a 24-hour outdoor adventure race. So we put a list of 300 tasks together that people can choose from. They work in teams. There's a big kickoff party on a Friday afternoon where we have vendors, some of our nonprofit partners, and people can start completing challenges right there. We built an app that basically guides them through the experience, and they snap a picture whenever they complete a challenge and upload that to social media. And so it was an incredible experience. We had that first day, the first 24 hours of our launch, we had over 30,000 social media posts of people completing challenges and pushing them to Facebook and Twitter. We're trending on Twitter here in Utah. And it was just an incredible way, to get the brand out there. And so we felt, and then at the same time, people who participate, they buy a ticket, they get a backpack in return, and so we seed product at the same time as really exposing people through the challenge list to what we stand for as a brand. So you can pick from challenges such as built a fire without matches, like outdoor, outdoorsy survival type challenges, various hikes and outdoor activities, mountain biking, whatnot. But then there are also humanitarian do-good challenges where we have, clean up a park or, volunteer at a food bank or a homeless shelter, et cetera. So it was just an amazing way to expose people to who we were, who Cotopaxi, what Cotopaxi stood for. And the results were incredible in terms of really creating these evangelists for the brand that really felt strongly about Cotopaxi and wanted to promote it and talk about it online and with their friends. And so it was an amazing experience for us. And that has then led to rolling it out into a full event series where we did, in the first year, we did 6 events in Salt Lake, in San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, Portland, and Las Vegas. And now this year, we have close to 15 for the first time on the East Coast, Boston, New York, as well as Chicago, San Diego, and we're going back to all the cities where we were in before. So it's really become a part of the brand, and people recognize us for it. You're absolutely right. It is a lot of work. Putting these events together is not easy. And so it takes a lot of effort and can cost a lot of money if you're not careful. So it has worked really well for us, but I think, and I strongly encourage other entrepreneurs to think through, okay, what is do a Questival, right? That it won't work. It works great because we're an outdoor gear brand, but think through what could I come up with in terms of physical experiences that let me build a genuine relationship with a customer base, and a customer base that I can then go back to and poll and get feedback from and listen to. And so I think that's the mandate. Like, what is sort of the equivalent for other brands in terms of physical in-person experiences? We've definitely found that to be a great way to enter a new city and really get the word out in a very genuine and unique way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had no idea that this was a part of your company from the very beginning. So you did this once to launch, obviously a ton of work. What did you see or what did you experience that made you guys say, let's do this again and do this multiple times?
Sure. Yeah, so I think there's some hard data that is very, very encouraging in terms of the people who participate in these events. They purchase a ticket so we can trace back just through the email address how they're then performing as customers. And so we see higher average order value, higher lifetime revenue, and so it's a very, very valuable cohort of customers, which kind of makes sense, right? They've been exposed to the brand in a very intense, almost cathartic experience during those 24 hours.
It's really as immersive as you can get, going to these in-person events.
Exactly. And so we built in this on the app. There's, you log your challenges, but then there's also a feed, which is like a hot or not feed where you see the submissions of all other teams and you can basically vote on the other teams. And so we see at every event a couple of million interactions with the brand. Like the last Salt Lake event, we had 3,000 participants and I think 2.6 million swipes with the app over the 24 hours. So just a very engaging experience. And so these cohorts of customers are incredibly valuable from a product customer perspective. And it's just an amazing way to get people to talk about the brand, right? In a, again, non-intrusive, non-advertising type manner. And so that's really what made us feel so strongly about this and roll out more. We're constantly monitoring, we're constantly tweaking and iterating the event to make sure it still delivers on that initial idea of exposing new incremental customers to the brand. But so far it's been a really amazing way to get the word out. And people purchase a ticket, so these events are typically profitable once they reach a certain scale. And so the cost per acquisition for these customers is actually negative. So it's a pretty interesting dynamic.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what if anything went wrong during the first in-person event, just for anyone else out there that's thinking about doing something like this, what are some things to look out for that maybe you didn't expect to happen?
Yeah, I think for one, it takes a lot of time and effort to pull this off, right? So we had like all hands on deck for, several weeks to make this happen in addition to, launching the business, which in and of itself is a feat. And so I think that's one thing to look out for. Make sure you don't let any of the other balls that you have in the air drop because you're trying to pull off an event. And then I think the other thing is to, we had a very specific problem, if you will, with our initial event where we now all the voting and judging of the team. So there are winners, right? So the teams who accrue the most points over the 24-hour period, they get a big prize. It's like a travel. This batch of last year's winners, they went to the Questival World Championship tour, which was just happened 4 weeks ago down in South America. The winning teams from each city raced against each other from Belize to Panama. and basically did a Questival down there with, humanitarian projects on the way and like just various cool adventures. And so, it's a big ticket premium, and people were really excited about it. And now all the judging is done by the participants themselves. But for the first event, we actually picked the winners, like we Cotopaxi, by like looking at their content and how many points they had accrued and whatnot, and like filtering out for any like inconsistencies and whatnot. And man, that was a big uproar because people like accused us of rigging it and like not being fair. And so it's just if you do some type of a race, then just be very clear about what are the rules, who's enforcing them, who's picking the winners, and just try to extract yourself as much as possible from that whole process, because otherwise you may take the blame of not picking the right winners.
Makes sense. So how do you did this once for the launch. How did you guys prepare to scale something like this up to, have multiple events every year?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's a matter similar to the product discussion we'd had. We are not events people, right? We had never done this before. We pulled the first one off, and it went really well. But man, it was so much work. And so, in order to scale it, again, we recognized that we needed somebody who had done this before. So we brought on board our VP of events, Seth, who is one of the founders of the Color Run.
Cool.
So you may or not be familiar. It's basically these races, those 5Ks, where you start with a white T-shirt and then they throw chalk at you at various stations. So you end up with this like crazy color everywhere, and people it's like super happy. It's not time. It's about the experience of doing a 5K as opposed to the time with which you complete the race. And so he was one of the original founders. They had millions of racers over the last couple of years. So very, very experienced event professional. And he basically oversees all our Questival events now with an event director, Flip. And so it was that recognition of we cannot do this alone. We need some help, and we brought somebody on board who could do that for us.
Makes sense. So for anyone out there that's thinking about going down the same path, do you have any recommendations on how they can get started if they're, a very small company with very, very limited budget and they're just trying to dip their toes into trying to launch in-person events to connect with the community, to, build these relationships with customers? Yeah.
Well, I think my recommendation would be to just try something really small, like invite people. And we still do a lot of that stuff as well. Invite people to come to your office and have, just a get together there. Like we had like barbecues at our office where we had people just show up and we threw some like burgers on the grill and we talked about product and showed them like new prototypes and got feedback. We organized hikes where people, just come meet us at our office. We'll go on a hike together with the founders. And so we have all kinds of, people come together and you just spend time together and chat and really get an understanding of what matters to them when they purchase and think about outdoor gear. And and none of these take nearly the capital or the time and effort to organize a 1,500 people event, right? But I think it's a great way to get started and to get a sense for, okay, how could this work? And then maybe you do something at just a small venue without, big permitting or anything like that. But, just basically start small, just like you would with any, sort of this idea of sort of lean startup methodology, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with. I think the same applies to events. You start with sort of your MVP, and then you iterate, and learn along the way. And I think for events, it's the same thing. Start small, and then continue to grow it from there.
Makes sense. So what are some goals for the remainder of this year? What are some goals you have for Cotopaxi?
Yeah, so 2016 is an amazing year for us. It's the first time that we're actually opening up the company to wholesale. So we've received so many inbound requests over the first 16 months of the business of retailers saying, asking us if they could sell our product. And so we started to pursue that in earnest this year. So we'll be in REI starting in the fall and various specialty retailers in the Pacific Northwest and other places. And so that's an exciting development. Wholesale. We're moving our office. We outgrow a very small space here in Salt Lake, and are actually moving to a downtown location and are opening a retail store, which we're really excited about. First foray into physical retail. And so, yeah, I mean, those are the sort of the big strategic projects for us this year. Obviously, besides scaling and continuing to grow our e-commerce space, is physical retail, our own store, and wholesale. And so we're very, very much in our infancy. 2 years is nothing in the lifetime of a brand. So we're still very much in listening and learning mode. But are seeing some really encouraging, early signs and signals from the market. And I'm really pumped to meet a lot of our customers face to face in our physical retail space. So yeah, that's sort of like the big strategic projects that are on the dock for us.
Awesome. Very exciting times for you guys. So thanks so much, Stefan. So codeepoxy.com is the website again. It's COTOPAXI.com. That's where you can also find links to the Questival, the in-person events that they run. Anywhere else you recommend the listeners check out? They want to follow along with what you guys are up to?
I mean, we're really active on all social media channels. Anders runs our social media, and he's done an incredible job. More recently, Snapchat has become a big thing for us. So follow us there, follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, and by all means, please reach out. If you're ever in Utah, come stop by our office. It will be in downtown Salt Lake. So we're always excited to chat with other entrepreneurs and just exchange notes.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check out the YouTube channel too. You guys have a lot of great videos on there. I was watching some earlier. I think very great high quality videos, especially if you want to learn more about what the Questival is like. There's a lot of kind of shoots or videos documenting that. So thanks again for your time, Stefan. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, same. Thanks, Felix. So great to be part of the community. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Shopify Masters, the e-commerce marketing podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs. To start your store today, visit shopify.com/masters to claim your extended 30-day free trial.